There is one particular mission in the Byzantine mission tree that gives you such an overwhelming economic advantage that conquering Anatolia becomes practically unnecessary. Most players either skip it entirely or use it completely wrong, because they don't understand the power of stacking bonuses. I do, and in 100 years I went from 43 to 1200 development, no longer losing 1.5 ducats a month but instead making over 130. And I'll show you exactly how to achieve that in just a few really simple steps. I'll show you how to conquer the entire Balkans, deal with the Byzantine reform, and then how to develop your provinces efficiently. Welcome imperialists, Lookas here. Before I show you everything you need to do before unpausing, I have to admit I'm actually a bit excited to be back in EU4, we'll see how long that lasts. If there's anything specific you'd like to see from this game or from Anbenar, let me know in the comments. Although I've already got something prepared for Anbenar as well, for this particular campaign I wanted a diplomatic reputation advisor, and among the mercenary companies at least one general with +2 siege. Both of those conditions are actually pretty easy to meet as Byzantium. Just like in EU5, we start with some very nasty negative privileges, although the ones in EU4 seem much worse to me. Especially the one that increases shipbuilding time, but I'll show you how to deal with that. Before that though, I hand out a few privileges, mainly the ones that give monarch points, especially administrative and military. I'm not taking the diplomatic one yet, because one of the negative privileges prevents me from taking low interest loans. This one specifically. So I need to raise capital for the upcoming wars another way, by selling crown land, which I immediately seize back afterward. As for the other privileges that will actually come in handy, there's of course the privilege for the best deals on ENEBA, where you'll find a link to the latest offers and discounts in the description of this video. I buy there quite often myself, highly recommended Lookas. As for the EU4 privileges, I'm taking religious diplomats for the extra diplomatic reputation, along with the privilege that increases yearly patriarch authority. For the nobility, I take supremacy over the crown. The burghers will provide additional recruitment capacity, which gives me a free heavy ship. Now I hire the diplomatic reputation advisor and rush to secure an alliance with the papal state. That will let me complete this mission with the additional bonus. Besides the morale, I'll also get cheaper mercenaries. And that works perfectly with one of the negative privileges, because oddly enough, it also provides a benefit: cheaper mercenaries. That's exactly what my army will be based on at the start. Sharing rivals makes the alliance with the Pope much easier, and in this case, I got lucky. Venice meets that requirement. On top of that, I send an insult to Provence, a scornful insult for the extra prestige. But I'm still just a little short of securing the alliance. I also use a little trick that gives me a chance of getting a cheaper military advisor. I recruit troops using all of my available manpower, then take an agenda, because if my manpower is low, I have a much higher chance of getting an advisor with a 50% cost reduction. And that's exactly what I get. Now, since the game is still paused, I simply cancel all the recruitment orders, and as soon as I unpause, I'll be able to hire that advisor. Now I can finally start spending money properly. So I recruit the free mercenary company, as well as the special palace guard unique to Byzantium, which doesn't count against my force limit. That gives me a pretty nice advantage. And once those units finish recruiting, they should be enough to secure the alliance with the Pope as soon as I unpause. There's one more country I absolutely need an alliance with, because an event will give me 250 gold. And that country is this sucker, I mean our very valuable Serbian ally. Basically, I do exactly the same things as I did with the Pope. Thanks to that, securing the alliance is no problem. On top of that, having at least 2 allies means Byzantium is much less likely to become the Ottomans' first target, because the countries in Anatolia are much weaker. At this point I still don't pick my remaining rivals, but I go back to the privileges and take the one that grants extra prestige, as well as the one that increases tax income. Taxes are absolutely OP during the first 50 years, and this decision for cheaper buildings will come in handy too, eventually. Assuming I don't forget about it, which I definitely won't. Still, the more important decision for me is the one that lets me build a heavy ship 50% faster. Sure, it'll still take about 3 years to finish, but it should be ready just in time for the war against the Ottomans. I add a few more galleys as well. That fleet should be enough. And now that all the necessary preparations are complete, it's time to move on to the next stage, the first wars, because there are going to be quite a few of them. I start by unpausing the game. Who would have guessed? At first, not at full speed, because I still have a few things to take care of, including hiring the discounted advisor. As soon as the first mercenaries arrived, my army became large enough to secure an alliance with the papal state. And that finally allows me to complete this mission while getting all the important bonuses. Although, to be honest, the ideal moment to complete this mission would be right before the war against the Ottoman Empire. But I know myself. I don't forget things often, but it does happen. And there's a chance I'd forget to click the mission, so I just do it now. On November 30th, I pause the game again and pick my new rivals, Aegean and Moldavia. When the event about the church union fires, I choose to maintain it for now, because the religious penalties aren't nearly as bad as the alternative. Otherwise, I'd simply risk losing both my alliance with the Pope and my bonuses to cheaper mercenaries. Then I wait until December 12th to declare war on Epirus as early as possible using the Reconquest Casus Belli, because Byzantium has a permanent core on their territory. Getting an Epirus with no allies is fairly rare, but usually they're allied to either Albania or Wallachia, which can make the war take a bit longer. In the meantime, I send my diplomats to improve relations with Serbia and Hungary, because I see a chance to secure an alliance with Hungary. While I still remember, I get rid of my cavalry. It's incredibly expensive and nowhere near as effective as it is in EU5. I also recruit a few generals, because honestly, I'm hoping they'll die. These rulers aren't exactly great. Whenever your ruler or heir is serving as a general, the chance of them dying increases. At least my ruler rolled 2 siege pips, which will definitely come in handy. To make Epirus fall faster, I send my fleet to blockade their ports. But pay attention, this is very important. Do not sink the Epirot fleet. It's going to be extremely useful. My third diplomat doesn't have anything better to do yet, so I send him to the Ottoman Empire to build a spy network. Spy networks are seriously underrated and they speed up sieges by a significant amount. Half a year later, the capital of Epirus falls. I want to take this province for myself, but not all of Epirus. I want to make them my vassal. But for Epirus to accept that, I first have to destroy their army. As soon as I do, they agree to everything I wanted. As a nice bonus, I also pick up some prestige and a bit of money. Keeping Epirus as a vassal is useful for 2 reasons. First, they keep all 11 of their ships, which will support me in the war against the Ottomans. And second, like every vassal, they slightly increase my land force limit. For Byzantium, even 1 extra matters. It's true that the mission reward for fully conquering the despotate is much better, but for the strategy I'm using, that fleet is essential. The extra diplomatic points is always nice too. More importantly, now that I have 2 vassals, I can enact the Strong Duchy's privilege, which makes my vassals more loyal. But even more importantly, it gives me 2 additional diplomatic relations. I increase my stability this late because, well, I forgot about it. And only now do I grant the privileges for cheaper advisors. For every estate, you might be tempted to decrease autonomy. I don't recommend doing that at this point. It's much better to wait until after the first war against the Ottomans. Now, I wait until I reach 150 positive relations with Serbia. I also sign a royal marriage with Hungary. Wow, what an empress. And I'm actually very close to securing an alliance with Hungary, which I do a month later because in the meantime I insult Venice. The Hungarians really appreciate that. And now that I have this alliance, I'm 100% certain I won't be the Ottoman Empire's first target. So now all that's left is the most exciting part of the game. Waiting! I lower the maintenance on literally everything. Actually, never mind. I do have to keep paying for my forts because I'm currently being pirated by Rhodes. I completely forgot about them. There's a small chance that Rhodes will soon be hit by a rebellion, allowing it to join my empire for free. Meanwhile, the Ottoman Empire declares war on Dalkadir, which means all of its armies will soon cross from the Balkans into Anatolia. I'm still not ready for war. I'm waiting for my fleet to finish building. To be fair, I probably won't need Hungary to intervene in my war against the Ottomans, but I improve favors with them anyway. You never know, they might come in handy. I activate the Encourage Development Edict in Constantinople, then I develop military twice more. The Thessaloniki campaign event fires, and I use the gained military experience to strengthen my heir. But the bonus I really care about is the extra siege ability. It's well worth the 150 military power. A few months before declaring war on the Ottomans, I start paying full maintenance for both my army and fleet again. I also hire a level 2 military advisor with the 4 defense bonus. To complete this mission, where I'll ask the Serbs for financial support. There's a chance they'll give me up to 250 ducats. And the tooltip explicitly says that the highest chance of success is when Serbia is my ally and I have 150 opinion with them. I meet both of those requirements. 3 months later, the full 250 gold comes in. By December, my fleet is finally finished and gathers in the strait. I've also moved my army to Constantinople. Now I can declare war on the Ottomans. But not with this casus belli, the Reconquest one is much better. Gelibolu has to be my target. But wait! still need to hire the advisor who increases fleet morale. He's essential for improving my chances of winning the first 2 naval battles against the Ottoman fleet. After that, I can fire him. And I also need an admiral for my fleet. Unfortunately, I didn't roll a particularly good one. Now we're finally ready to go to war. At first, I'll be playing on the lowest speed again, because a lot is about to happen. I need to win the naval battle and send the Ottoman fleet to the bottom of the sea. Unfortunately, a lot at the start of the game comes down to luck, and so far it's on my side. But the entire success of this war depends mainly on the fort at Gelibolu. If it falls within a month, the war is basically won. That should theoretically be possible because I can bombard the fort. I think you need 100 cannons in your fleet for each fort level. And yes, I can still do it even while the fleet is in the middle of a battle. As soon as the bombardment breaches the walls, I launch an assault. Then I literally pause the game every single day and while holding shift consolidate my armies. That way every assault is carried out with full strength regiments. This gives me a much better chance of breaking the defenders' morale before I lose my own. And it's absolutely worth doing every single day. So after just 17 days and despite losing almost my entire army, yeah, that hurts, and it was incredibly lucky the fort at Gelibolu falls. Because of this privilege, Byzantium suffers a massive penalty to assaults. Now all I have to do is wait for my fleet to win, along with the Athenian and Epirot ships which came to support me. I pull my army back onto my own territory so the regiments can reinforce more quickly from the reserves. I win the naval battle, sinking 3 Ottoman galleys, which is actually very important, because I now have such a large advantage in warships that I no longer have to worry about the Ottoman fleet. And my commander ended up getting probably the least useful trait possible. I detached the damaged ships from the fleet and ordered them back to port. Oh, only 5 are left. The rest of the fleet can head back as well and repair, because the Ottomans like to expand their navy during wars. I also allow allied fleets to attach to mine, although that feature doesn't work particularly well. Now that I control the strait, I've effectively trapped the Ottoman armies in Anatolia. They won't be able to return, and the entire Balkans are just waiting to be conquered. It's extremely rare for the AI to secure enough military access through every neighboring country to march all the way around into the Balkans. So I'm safe 99% of the time. At this point, I've already secured the war goal, so my war score will only keep increasing. The Ottoman capital is right next door, and I'll be capturing that shortly as well. To speed the whole process up even more, I recruit the cheapest mercenary company available nearby. In the meantime, an event fires that gives me the opportunity to remove one of my negative privileges. So that's exactly what I do. And look, the Ottomans have finished their wars in Anatolia and are now trying to cross the strait. But they can't because I control one side of it. And my fleet is sitting right in between. Since I'm already confident this war is going exactly the way I want, I break my alliance with Serbia. I don't need them anymore. Now I simply march my armies from province to province, occupying everything as quickly as possible. I also speed up the siege of the fort in Thessaloniki. That might provoke the Ottoman fleet into sailing out, but they don't seem very eager to leave port. I guess they're a little too afraid of my heavy ship. Unfortunately, my loans are also starting to come in, because getting rid of that privilege also cost me a significant portion of my cash reserves. I get a certain Genoese general, who became famous for defending Constantinople, although I'm not sure he was actually that exceptional. At this point, after conquering the entire Balkans, all that's left is to wait for the Ottomans' attitude toward the war to drop. Ideally, I want to see the red icon. That usually takes about 6 years. I also disband the Palace Guard because it's the most expensive unit to maintain. We'll recruit a new one later. Oh, and I almost forgot, it's worth transferring your forts to a vassal so they're the one paying for the maintenance. Otherwise, you'd be paying for them yourself. And every fort costs some ducats. Right before the peace deal, I'll simply transfer those provinces back to myself. After doing all of that, instead of losing 5 ducats a month, I'm only losing 2.34. I also develop Constantinople a bit more while it's still relatively cheap. That earns me another ducat of monthly income, and I also get rid of my diplomatic advisor, so I'm actually making a profit now. And just so it doesn't look like I'm sitting on speed 5 doing absolutely nothing, I send my armies to march across Bulgarian territory and loot it. That earns me money while also increasing the chance of a Bulgarian rebellion. A win-win! Looting works by moving an army into a province and leaving it there until all the loot stored in that province has been taken. Cavalry does it twice as fast. And thanks to that, I managed to pay off all of my loans. I was also hoping for that event. That increases the chance of a rebellion if you have mercenaries in your army. And since my mercenaries are the ones doing the looting, that's exactly what happens. In this case, all of Bulgaria gains 8 unrest. Unfortunately, I have to wait a full 30 months before signing the peace with the White Sheep. As soon as I do, Ottoman's willingness to continue the war drops dramatically. At that point, I take all the Bulgarian provinces I want. For now, I leave Anatolia alone. There are certainly some provinces there with incredibly valuable goods, but most of them also have very high development cost penalties. Well, except for the drylands, those are actually pretty cheap to develop. The Balkans, however, are a much better investment overall. Cutting off the Ottoman territories in Europe from the rest of the empire in Anatolia also accomplishes two things. When the Bulgarian rebellion eventually breaks out, the Ottoman armies won't be able to respond, and the entire region will break free. I also take Edirne, the Ottoman capital, because if it's cut off from the Anatolian provinces, the Ottomans will simply move their capital back there anyway. The only way to prevent that would be to leave them access by sea, so there's really no reason not to take the capital. A fantastic first victory, practically without any casualties. By taking this entire region in the first war, I've also fulfilled the requirements for the mission. To reverse the decline of Byzantium, which grants some really powerful rewards along with a huge number of permanent claims. The road to rising the phoenix from the ashes begins now. First, I reduce my war exhaustion, and only then do I start coring the newly conquered provinces. More importantly, I need to get my crown land above 10%. By seizing land, the reason is that below that threshold I gain 10 monthly autonomy, but that penalty will soon be offset by the peace modifier. In other words, as long as I'm not at war, autonomy won't increase anymore. For now, I dog the fleet and mothball it. I send one diplomat to improve relations with Austria, because we'll soon find out whether Hungary remains independent or not. That's because around the year 55 or 56, the event for the Austro-Hungarian Union can fire. I also take advantage of the fact that I still have a sizable army, and declare war on Serbia, calling Bosnia in separately to war. For now, I don't call in any of my allies. My main objective is to take Kosovo. One battle after another, I wipe out their armies. Then I spend a few seconds wondering why there isn't a single fort here. I'm just having flashbacks to EU5, where this region is basically fort after fort. So now I go for a classic carpet siege. I spread at least 1000 troops across virtually every single location, or province, because that prevents the AI from recruiting local troops. And I can already see that I need to hurry. Look, Hungary has already started recruiting troops and moving toward the border. That means they're about to attack either Serbia or Bosnia, and then Herzegovina declares war on Bosnia. Who could have seen that coming? Hungary will be at war any moment now as well. That's why I wanted to call my allies in, because whenever a country is already involved in a war, oh, I can't call Hungary anymore. Oh well. But when a country is already at war, it generates less aggressive expansion against you. In the meantime, I also improve relations with my vassals, since I'll begin annexing them after this war. And there it is, Hungary has declared war on Bosnia. Unfortunately, because Bosnia is being fought over like pizza in Italy, I can't make them my vassal. So instead, I simply conquer everything myself, even if it means risking a small coalition. But in EU4, a coalition needs at least 4 countries to form, and 2 is less than 4. So we're fine. The conquest continues. For now, I concentrate development from all the conquered provinces. Later, I'll restore that development by manually developing them again. This simply makes scoring cheaper, which is exactly what I care about at this stage. I immediately release Bosnia as a vassal. That even allows me to keep my alliance with Hungary, and I'd still like to keep that around for a little while longer. Especially since I'm about to complete another mission that will make future conquests even easier, the one focused on reducing aggressive expansion. I'm really going to need that. Now I lower autonomy everywhere because this is finally the right moment to do it, and I'm actually happy to see Bulgarian separatists gaining progress. No, I am deliberately not releasing Bulgaria as a vassal. I want an independent Bulgaria to emerge here later through the rebellion. If I release Bulgaria now and then they gained all those provinces through the revolt, they'd end up being an extremely disloyal vassal. Instead, I declare war on Herzegovina. I want those provinces to go to Bosnia. At the same time, I also attack Wallachia, with the help of the Papal State. Meanwhile, I can enact my first government reform, noble privileges. To be honest, Byzantium has a unique government reform here that allows it to create client states, a subject type that's normally only available around the 17th or 18th century. At the same time, it increases the maximum number of Byzantium's unique subjects, the pronoiai, but I'll talk more about those later. For now, I know perfectly well that during this era you want to stack tax modifiers. So that's the option I choose. For the moment, I occupy every province I can. But we're not done yet. Poland somehow drops out of the war, which means I can now take everything. Actually, I'll let Athens handle those occupations. I'll use the papal troops to crush an Orthodox rebellion. And then another Orthodox rebellion. How many of you are there? I also declare war on Albania because I want to conquer it while the Pope is fighting on my side. After all, the Papal State was Albania's only ally. I conquer all of Wallachia and my coalition risk goes up. I conquer Herzegovina and the coalition risk goes down. Now that all these rapid conquests are behind me, and I took advantage of the fact that the Balkans are full of small, weak countries, allowing Byzantium to grow incredibly quickly, I can finally move on to the stabilization phase and start reforming my privileges. I begin by releasing Wallachia as my vassal. Next, I improve relations with all of my vassals. I use all of my diplomats for this. I also already have 3 advisors hired. Unfortunately, my terrible ruler is still alive. Now I also focus on developing a single area, or rather, a single province with my gold mine. I've already reduced autonomy here. From the Orthodox religion, I also take the development icon. Technically, I could activate the mission that would let me develop my provinces much more efficiently, by doubling the development bonus from the icon. But that would be a huge mistake. You need to wait with that mission. So in the meantime, I catch up on technology and work toward increasing my country's stability. My goal is also to build 5 churches as quickly as possible, of course in the provinces where they'll generate the most income. I'll need that to carry out the church reform. Once I've developed Kosovo to 15 development, the next step is expanding the infrastructure, because that also reduces development cost. And unfortunately, or fortunately, my ruler died. The heir is actually pretty good, except he's a Habsburg. But I can still check one thing, how good the rebels are. I just have to open this tab, and I can see that the rebel leader is weak. My current ruler is better. This rebellion happens because of Byzantium's current form of government. Fortunately, it can be reformed later on, but for now, it's actually an advantage. So I'm going to crush this rebellion. Well, great, my ruler also happens to be cruel, which increases unrest, and there we go. The rebellion has been crushed. An heir to the throne has also been born, but he's not exactly outstanding. I have a feeling he might have an accident. I also begin annexing my 2 oldest vassals. It will cost me exactly 0 because I have permanent cores on the territory of both vassals. And after getting rid of those 2 vassals, Bosnia becomes loyal enough for me to establish it as a pronoia. This type of vassal doesn't count toward the diplomatic relations limit, although you can only have a limited number of them. That limit depends on your government reforms, adopted ideas, and your force limit. But even better, once I use this option on that vassal, I'll inherit all of Bosnia upon my current ruler's death. Yes, literally for free. Of course, some time has to pass first, I won't have to annex it, which saves me a huge amount of diplomatic power. Going back to the gold mine, I develop it up to 10 diplomatic development. Because beyond that point, the chances of the mine collapsing increase dramatically. Thanks to this, the income from the gold mine accounts for roughly 1/3 of my budget. Now I sell crown land. The merchants are happy, so I revoke the negative privilege that was penalizing my navy. With the money I gained, I build more churches. I break my alliances with the Catholic countries, including Hungary, unfortunately. I end the union with the church, which significantly worsens my relations with the papacy. But it also removes another annoying privilege. The last privilege I still have to revoke is the military one. In its current form, it's fairly difficult to remove, because the decision has quite demanding requirements. And along the way, I've also accumulated morale penalties. So for now, I focus on embracing institutions. And after embracing the Renaissance, I can get a good, inexpensive advisor. I hire him immediately. I feel like I know him from somewhere. Hey, I have a question for you. Was it actually possible to restore Hellenism in EU4 or not? After developing a dozen or so provinces, I can complete this mission. It's important because it lowers the requirements for the military reform. Now, I simply need a better advisor and an army of 15,000 troops. I no longer need the additional morale. So yes, I carry out the army reform, which effectively removes my last remaining negative privilege. To be honest, that was much easier than in EU5. Now that I've finished reforming the entire country, dealt with the rebellions, and strengthened my economy a bit, I can finally move on to the next stage, bringing the entire Balkans under my control. I begin this stage by declaring war, because I simply have the opportunity. Venice is currently at war with the Ottomans, and even better, they've lost all of their allies except the Knights of Rhodes. So why shouldn't I take advantage of that, especially since the Venetian armies are fairly weak? In the meantime, I reform the bureaucratic system. And even though I have a very unique government reform here, there's nothing better than regional council in this era. Because now I activate the tax edict in every single state, increasing tax income by 50%, which allows me to expand my economy incredibly quickly. It practically doubles my tax income. A little later, I gain a technological advantage, which makes it so Venice doesn't stand the slightest chance in this war. And after capturing Venice itself, I take a large amount of territory from them, along with plenty of money. Unfortunately, this war causes my alliance with Hungary to break. Yes, again. But fortunately, I can ally Austria instead. I hand over most of the conquered territory to Bosnia, so they can annex it themselves, because I'll receive all of it anyway once I integrate the country. And my ruler is getting older and older. I also managed to get one heavy ship and a few galleys, which means my fleet is now stronger than the Ottomans. So I take advantage of that and attack, to seize the Ottoman territories in the Balkans, and this time I use my favorite tactic, letting part of their army cross the strait and then blockading it, allowing me to defeat them in smaller battles and eventually wipe them out completely. In the meantime, I've already unlocked another administrative technology. Now I start building production buildings in every province with valuable trade goods. My first age development, and honestly this is something I really miss in EU5. Although maybe that's not entirely true, because in EU5 you effectively get all of the age bonuses automatically at the beginning of the age. In EU4, however, I take the reduced aggressive expansion bonus. I repeat this trick many times, and I basically finish the war by taking most of the provinces I need. Unfortunately, these two are occupied by the Venetians, so I can't take them just yet. The only thing left is taking Zagreb from Hungary. And after some very hard-fought battles, I finally managed to capture all of Zagreb, along with a considerable amount of money from Hungary. Fortunately, the coalition still isn't particularly threatening. Next, I go after the Venetians again, sinking their transport and trade fleet, but unfortunately they currently have a very powerful battle fleet. Still, I don't really expect any major problems, even though this war is a bit larger than I anticipated. After countless battles and rebuilding my fleet twice, I finally managed to break through the Venetian navy. And near the end of the war, the Venetians give me a truly great gift. They leave the army stranded on an island, so all I have to do is defeat them, let them retreat, block them in, and earn a huge amount of war score by stack wiping their army. And in the end, I take Venice itself, which was the main objective of this war. After that, I turn my attention to the Ottoman Empire once again. And I seem to have a huge advantage because the Ottoman armies do nothing but run away from me. This time I take the last two Ottoman provinces in the Balkans, a huge amount of money, and humiliate them, because that was the final requirement I needed to trigger my golden era at the perfect moment. The phoenix has risen again because I have finally driven the Turks out of the Balkans. Lots of points. And finally, after conquering this entire region, I can move on to the next stage, where I'll focus entirely on development. And you'll find out the most effective way to do it. I'll start with the fact that I finally managed to inherit Croatia, before Bosnia, and just a little earlier I had also inherited Wallachia. And that's exactly where Byzantium's strength lies. You can acquire huge amounts of territory without spending a single administrative or diplomatic point. And when it comes to a development-focused campaign, there are really three things that matter. First, generating as many monarch points as possible each month. Second, stacking as many development cost modifiers as possible to make developing provinces cheaper. And third, saving monarch points on everything else, such as newly conquered provinces, technology costs, and ideas, because that leaves you with more points to spend on development. Monarch points come from several sources. The first and most important is your ruler, the second is advisors, and the third is rivals. Oh, and also from estate privileges, which can provide a very respectable monthly increase. I'm ignoring all the random sources like events. As for reducing development cost, there are many different ways to do it, most commonly through ideas, either national ideas which Byzantium has none, or through the idea groups you choose. In my case, I've already completed aristocratic ideas, which reduce development cost by 5%. I also have innovative ideas, which reduce technology cost, allowing me to save a large number of monarch points of every type. But more importantly, innovative ideas greatly accelerate innovativeness gain, and innovativeness reduces the cost of everything you can spend monarch points on, up to a maximum of minus 10%. Right now it's still fairly low. You can also get all power cost reduction from the golden era, and later, at administrative technology level 17, 23 and 27, you gain additional development cost modifiers. Prosperity is also extremely important. You want every state to reach 100% because that gives a local minus 10% development cost modifier. You also need merchant loyalty at least 60 to get another minus 10%. And of course there are edicts, ports and expanded infrastructure. Not to mention unique national missions, such as the one I've deliberately saved. Once I activate it, it'll double the bonus from this icon. But I'm still waiting because I first want to finish infrastructure ideas, which will give me another 10% reduction at the end. Only then will I activate everything at once. Because it's the combination of all these modifiers that really makes the difference, not triggering them one by one. I also try to stay ahead in administrative and military technology, because that provides passive innovativeness gain. At the same time, I intentionally fall behind in diplomatic technology, so I can catch up later at a much lower cost. Diplomatic points, along with military points, are incredibly important. Administrative points are somewhat less so. Another advantage of Byzantium is that after every ruler's death, you get a pretender rebellion. And that gives you a chance to gain an incredibly powerful new ruler. You just have to let the rebels win. To do that, I turn off my forts and wait until they've captured enough provinces or the capital to win the rebellion. I also recommend checking from time to make sure this guy hasn't changed. 20 more months to go. Of course, the downside of this strategy is that prosperity drops very quickly. Lul, and the pretender gives me another pretender. But in the end, I got a very good ruler and a young one at that, along with his army. And now let's take a look at it. Before I trigger the golden era and begin my development spree, this is what the country's stats look like. And these are my current development costs. For now, I also have level 3 advisors, but I'll gradually upgrade them to level 5. Because honestly, advisors are exactly what I want to be spending my money on right now. Before developing your provinces, it's also worth selling crown land, because that's when it's worth the most. Otherwise, it's easy to go above 30% crown land, and beyond that point, every additional percent reduces the land sale value. And just before the end of the age, I triggered the Byzantine Golden Era. This lets me unlock ideas faster and more cheaply. While waiting, I also develop some provinces, but only up to 15 development. I simply don't want to waste the monarch points I'm generating, because my monthly gain is incredibly high. Then, after finishing the idea group, I stockpile even more monarch points. And only then do I activate all the temporary missions that apply either to the entire country or to specific states. Byzantium also has quite a few permanent bonuses, but they're limited to certain regions. The best one, however, is the mission that doubles the effect of your chosen icon. Orthodoxy has an icon that gives plus 10% development cost reduction, so now I'm doubling that bonus. That's right, it's right here. And thanks to that, just look at how cheap it is for me to develop a province that's already at 15 development. It's incredibly cheap. And after expanding the infrastructure, I even reduced the cost down to 5. I hadn't noticed it before, but as Byzantium, I can restore the Senate. That gives me another 10% development cost reduction for 10 years. At that point, development becomes ridiculously cheap. Some provinces I even developed all the way to 30 development. I also forgot to mention that development cost depends on things like terrain type and climate. As you can see here, this province has an arid climate, which adds plus 10%. Most of these modifiers are penalties, after all. And sometimes development cost is also affected by the trade good produced in the province. Even so, I overdid it a bit. I have too much crown land. But thanks to that, I'll be able to reform Byzantium very quickly. I develop provinces for several reasons. First of all, every level of development you buy with monarch points provides specific bonuses. The most important ones are diplomatic and military development. As a province's total development increases, it also gains more building slots. And generally speaking, every province should have a production building, a manufactory, and either a manpower building or a force limit building. If you'd like a full guide on development-focused gameplay, how to build a strong economy in EU4 on the latest patch, let me know and I'll make an updated version. And after just 15 years, I've gained more than 700 development, I'm now the strongest country in the game, I've nearly tripled my income. I can field an army of 136,000 men, and my monthly manpower recovery is 2,500. Not bad for a little Byzantium. At the same time, I've also moved my main trade to Venice. I collect trade there, steering trade from Constantinople through Ragusa and into Venice. My manpower situation is looking excellent as well. And when it comes to province development, my Byzantine Empire is practically covered in green. Constantinople alone has reached 56 development. That's possible because one of my missions allows me to consolidate development without any penalty. Honestly, if I were to keep playing, my next step would be conquering Anatolia. After taking those provinces, I'd consolidate their development, then hand the land over to a vassal, whom I'd later integrate through the Pronoia system. I'd continue developing my territory afterward, just without the incredibly powerful bonus from the religious mission. And if you'd like to see an overpowered Byzantium in Europe Universalis 5, I highly recommend that episode. You'll also see how the Pronoia system works and just how unique and powerful this country is in that game. Because in EU5, Hellenism is definitely there.